and our attorney is trying to challenge that. One of the causes of action in our federal civil rights suit is that libel and slander letter.
Would that letter prevent the people who actually own the fences, the actual real parties of interest, from helping you? The defamation?
Not that we're aware of, but in the throes of all of this, we don't live in the same neighborhood that we used to anymore, and we were, quite frankly, like you said, after the public lynching and this circus that went on our bedroom community street for 7.5 hours with these rumors that,
right,
they found dead bodies in our house, or we robbed a bank. I mean, you can't even imagine the stuff that was going around.
They said they found dead bodies in your house?
No.
Rumors that started flying around.
Oh, the rumors, right.
Was not ever, that particular statement was never put into writing in these, rag magazines and things, newspapers here in our town, but that was certainly what was going around the neighborhood. Some of our neighbors, friends with us, came and told us, what kind of stuff was being said, and people were afraid, and they, parents didn't want our son to be associating with their kids, and this kind of precludes you from just going up to somebody's door and knocking on it and saying, hey, all of this is lies. Really, we beg of you not to believe all of this. And, at some future date, if we could still go back and make some of that damage that our son actually did correct and better than the city did, we're still willing to do that. We absolutely are.
And I'd like to jump in again, just for the audience out there. The damage that she's talking about that her kid did was he magic markered and sprayed paint, did a little bit of graffiti, which this was all blown out of proportion for. And like she said, SWAT teams came in her house over this. This is where we're going in America, and it's time for all you people out there, everybody, to take a good look at what's going on. It's going on the East Coast. It's going on the West Coast. It's going on. I have friends down in Florida who the same stuff is going on. It's time for everybody in this country to wake up and start. We all have to unite and stick together. And when she gave the address of the judges, please, people out there, write letters to these people and say, we're from New York, and we're aware of what's going on and how these people are being abused, railroaded, maligned, and not getting due process and equal protection. Put that in your letters, people. We need to stand together.
Right. And what goes around comes around. So maybe pause and say again those addresses for people to take down, because we know it can happen here. It probably does happen here.
Oh, we know it does happen here.
Randy, isn't this an example of what community radio can do? If people are given, they actually hear the voice and they hear this story and they go, oh my God, this was all about shareholder profits.
Yeah.
When she says Randy's our technical person. Randy owns this studio that we broadcast
This is
from.
her vision of many years.
And Randy
was waiting to see if he wanted to make a comment regarding that.
Randy?
Well, it seems like we've entered a time in this country of absolute zero tolerance, that whatever some authority with a tin badge someplace says goes, whether or not it's legal, whether or not it's even constitutional, it's zero tolerance. It's exactly the same thing that came up in the 1980s when Ronald and Nancy Reagan declared their war on drugs. The first thing they said is, well, we don't care whether it's right or wrong, you're not going to do it. And if you do it, we're going to come down with you on the full force of the law.
Right.
Now I hear stuff that police and prosecutors, they go to school. And, they've always gone to school. For example, John Jay is a big police college in New York. And now I hear reports coming out of there that police are trained not in public relations, which is what cops used to be, but now they're trained in this yelling at people in order to attain control. And they will abuse, they will go however far they have to outside of the law.
To wrest consent.
In order to wrest consent, exactly.
Yeah. It's just gone off the hook, and the American people have to stand up against this. It's just straight out tyranny. And when it's okay and judges will give broad sweeping search warrants with absolutely no probable cause, literally this search warrant says that the probable cause would be forthcoming, that it was the maintenance cleanup guy, Mark Durbin, who had found more evidence that my son had done this again. And let me tell you, he did not do it again, and he had already, under fear and duress and our parental rights being suspended, been treated as an adult as a 12-year-old child and questioned for 4 hours until almost 2 o'clock in the morning, where we as his parents were denied to be present while this little boy was questioned. And we asked to call an attorney, and we were denied to have an attorney present while he was questioned. And we were told he is an adult in the eyes of the law, and he, quote, unquote, waived his Miranda rights.
I'm gonna jump in again.
Okay.
Demand a sworn affidavit that this person saw your son do it. More than likely, he's not going to sign a sworn affidavit when he knows that he's perjuring himself. And without a sworn affidavit for this man,
There is no warrant.
it shoots down everything that they've done. If he won't give a sworn affidavit, he saw your son doing more graffiti, then everything should fall apart. With these courts, you know.
Exactly. We've already asked for this in formal documents, to which they absolutely refuse to even acknowledge exist. And this precious civil rights attorney who's taken on my husband's criminal case, she is brazen enough that she filed a motion where she laid all of this out in this motion, how they have falsified documents, destroyed evidence, never produced the probable cause for this broad sweeping search warrant, with SWAT team going into an American home to do what to a 70-pound 12-year-old? They didn't need a SWAT team to question our son further or come in and look around the house. They could have, there's so many other options that could have been taken other than getting a judge somewhere to sign a broad sweeping search warrant to go into a home. For a kid 5 weeks prior, guys, he was arrested on March 14 of 2013, and they did not invade our home until 4/20 of the same year on National Marijuana Day, and I'm sure they had already snooped around with their NSA spying to see that we had our cards here in California to grow our own medical plants.
Legally.
In organic worm composted soil. I mean, this was for medicinal reasons only, and they got in our house and they were sorely disappointed to find out that we had every I dotted and every T crossed, and we had not one plant more than we were supposed to have. So they turned their attention on literally manufacturing a crime against my husband to recoup the fact that basically I feel they ran a multi-agency drill through our house on April 20, 2013, which just happened to be a couple of days after the Boston bombing, which, I don't know about you all, but I think that was just another false flag to further this nightmare of a police state in this country. I mean, they had tanks running down Boston. Yeah. The entire city is closed down. This is insanity.
And they went house to house without warrants.
Allowing this to happen.
So you signed a motion and you had it notarized. You were moving the court to dismiss the case?
Well, she is a barred attorney. She filed the motion, and
Did you
had
sign
a hearing.
it? Did you sign it?
We didn't sign it.
Can I ask a question here? Something's really sticking with me, and I have to ask it.
What?
Are we living in a country now where a 12-year-old actually has statutory authority to waive their Miranda rights? Do they know what their Miranda rights are? How can somebody claim that a 12-year-old can consciously make a decision to waive a right to which, as a 12-year-old, they may not understand and certainly don't understand the implications of doing so.
I think through the marriage license, the children, the first owners, so to speak, are the state, unless you challenge that. That's why Carl Lentz's approach is to say, these children came from our bodies, you know, the husband and the wife, and they are our property. He uses the word property, and that seems to be an offensive word, but that's the word that works, because on one hand, say for example, if they find marijuana in your car, the crucial word is your. That means you're responsible for it. But if you have a driver's license or the car is owned by the state, you know, then you're in a different jurisdiction, but they can't have it both ways. So it's a fast-moving target, and you have to keep your eye on the ball which way it is.
Right, but
are they your children and your property or not?
Who has custodial rights to waive and statutory rights to waive those Miranda rights on behalf of a child? This seems to me to be where there may be a big legal error here, because under the Constitution, a 12-year-old is not empowered to waive Miranda rights.
Unfortunately, we have a corporate government, and we're not under the Constitution. And a lot of people don't know, when they got a birth certificate for their child, they sign their child over to the state, and the state actually has a claim. And I'm not saying this is legal or correct, but this is what they do. That once you have a birth certificate for your child, they say that they have a claim on that child. That's like a bill of sale or a bill of lading for the child, and that you are only there to protect and raise that child. It's like the child is being loaned to you.
Right. It's just a privilege to parent them until they decide to suspend your parental rights and take them permanently or temporarily. And we have learned this the hard way, and we're still learning this stuff, that we really do not have any so-called legal rights.
Well, we're all learning it, Kim. I think that's the process of becoming free. That's the exodus out of Egypt.
And unfortunately, so many people out there in America don't know what we've just been talking about. And a lot of people out there think what Joe just said is crazy. But actually what I've said, I've known, I've studied, I know, I've seen the laws, and I know that that's the game they're playing. These people do not go by the Constitution. The Constitution that the Founding Fathers wrote was the Constitution for the United States. That was us saying it's for them. The government that we're setting up, this is to keep them in line. Well, they went and they trademarked and copyrighted the Constitution of the United States, which turned it around where they now have the copyright on it, and they can apply it to us, where it was set up for us to keep the government in line. When they trademarked it and changed it to of the United States
and owned the copyright,
they now can they believe that they can run roughshod over the American people. But as the American
copyright infringement. That's what it is. It's about copyright infringement.
That is what it is.
You go and you notarize your signature. That's why I asked you if you signed the motion. When you go and notarize the signature, you have to present ID. You always think that's your legal name. Well, it turns out that that birth certificate thing that Joe was talking about, at that point, that legal name is not yours. It's owned by the Crown Corporation. So you go in there to notarize. You think, I'm going to do this really right and legal, and you're so proud of your legal name, and you've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So you present your ID. Well, guess what? As soon as you present what you think is your ID, you've created fraud because it's not yours. You're copyright infringing.
It's been copyrighted by the reason when they made your birth certificate, they put it in all capital letters.
Right.
And then when they turn that birth certificate over to the state turns it over to the Crown Corporation in London, England. So now the Crown Corporation has trademark on your name, has copyright on that all capital name. When you use that name, if you go into court And you notice whenever you go into court, they go, state your name for the record. And as soon as you state your name for the record, you're violating a copyright infringement. So as soon as you state your name, you are now in
an act where you're the fraudster,
right,
and dishonor immediately.
Right, in dishonor. That was the word I was looking for. They consider that you're in dishonor. You have now lied to the court, so anything you say, they can say, well, we don't have to listen to this person. They're a liar. That's the
because
sleazy
it's not their
game.
name. It's not their name.
Right. That's the sleazy game that they have tricked everybody in America into.
How do you get around that?
Wait a minute.
You get around it by saying, I don't claim that legal name. That's not my name. I am a man or I am a woman, and you can use your first name and don't give them your last name. And another thing that this works for some people.
Or just believe it in your heart that that's not who you are, and particularly how you're saying this is a spiritual battle. Who are you? Feeling it in your bones. They're going to say, is this who you are? And then once you say, yes, that's who I am, whoop, you're down this chute.
You're in dishonor. You've made yourself a liar, and anything you say they don't have to pay attention to.
And bar attorneys can use
trick.
the copyright.
That's the trick they do. And there is another thing. When they call your legal name in court, now this has worked for some people, and some judges just ignore it and override it. But if you take your birth certificate into court, all right, not you, if one took their birth certificate into court, when they say, like, let's say, Joe Barton. Is Joe Barton, we call Joe Barton. You hold up the birth certificate and you say, here's the defendant right here, Your Honor, and I'm the beneficiary of the contract, and I demand that you, as trustee for the account for this birth certificate, dismiss this case and charge the charges to the prosecutor. People have done that and gotten their cases dismissed. Now, not all judges, we learn something how to get around them, and as soon as a couple people do it and get away with it, then all of a sudden, I guess they tell the other judges and they close that loophole.
But
Right.
they also want to know is how much you feel it and you're motivated. That's why I'm saying something like going back to the original scene of the crime, so to speak, to interact with the people whose fences it was. Mm-hmm. At first it seems, they think so badly of me and all this bad press. But you may be surprised that once you face something like that, just flesh and blood, human to human, that something might shift. You get a really nice letter that might be even worth more than the letters that I hope come in from the Kingston area and Woodstock.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and we will consider that.
And one other thing, another game that these people play, let's say you are in an insane asylum, right? But you're charged with a crime. Mm-hmm. If they bring you into court, well, obviously, if you're insane, then you can't speak for yourself. So they give you a lawyer to speak for you, right? And then if that lawyer is speaking for you, now it's up to the lawyer, the prosecutor, and the judge to decide what they're going to do with this crazy person who's not capable of speaking for themselves. So now the Bar Association has set this up so anytime you have a lawyer, I never use lawyers, but I'm not recommending you to do. You do what you feel is right for you. But I never use lawyers because I learned a long time ago, when you walk in with a lawyer, the judge assumes if you need someone to speak for you, you're an incompetent.
Right.
And if you're incompetent, that's why the judge, if the lawyer's talking for you and he's not saying what you want, you go, Your Honor, I want to say something. The judge will say, no, you can't speak. The lawyer's going to speak for you. And that's why they always try to force a lawyer on you, because they don't want you to put something on the record that you can appeal. And lawyers all protect judges. I won't say your lawyer, but 90% of the lawyers, most of the lawyers, they're part of the Bar Association. They don't want to piss off the judge because they know they're going to be in front of him again. So they're going to play the little game, and the judge don't want to see it go appeal, because no judges like to have their rulings overturned, or for a higher court to say you acted like a tyrant. So that's why it's a game in court. The lawyer needs the judge and needs the prosecutor, because if the cops didn't arrest you and the prosecutor didn't charge you, that lawyer wouldn't be making the big salary that they're making. It's all a game, and besides cleaning up our courts, we have to get rid of the Bar Association.
Right. I hear you. We did try, to do this without a lawyer for 10 months, and it was very, very stressful, let me tell you.
Oh, could you sort of speak about that? Because you said how scary it was, but then you got to a point where it wasn't scary anymore. Maybe as you're unfolding, I don't mean to distract you, but I find that very important. I can say the same thing in my process. It's terrifying
to go try to file these things, and this is a world we have never been a part of. My husband and I have been together since we were 17 and 18 years old. We've been married 25 years. We have 2 beautiful children. My husband provides 12 jobs for people in this town. He runs the most ethical, honest optometric practice. He prescribes eyeglasses for people in our community. I mean, we've never harmed another soul or their property in our entire lives. And our 12-year-old was caught doing something stupid and destructive, but no one died. Nothing was unrepairable. This was a child doing childhood mistakes. I mean, we got interviewed this last Saturday on Michael Herzog's America's Awakening on RBN, and he was telling, the story of when he was 12-year-old, and he and his best friend decided they were going to egg the house of this boy they were mad at. And back in those days, we sort of still lived in Mayberry, so to speak. And the neighbors called the police, and the police came, and they took Michael and his buddy, and they took them up to the door, and they said, okay, they're here, we've talked to them, and they're going to clean up this egg mess. And that was it. Now in 2013, 2014, and what's almost here is 2015 already, your child does something silly in the neighborhood that he's grown up in, that he got brought home from the hospital to, and it's Fallujah. And you have a SWAT team, and our police department is one of the bedroom communities in America now that has a tank. They could have rolled the tank down our street that day that they invaded our home for 7.5 hours, unlawfully arrested my husband, and handcuffed him to a patio chair for over 5 hours. My daughter was sick. They wouldn't even let her have a box of Kleenex. They didn't have water. They didn't have food. They were arrested. This police department has never been made to be held accountable for that. They never produced arrest warrants. My husband and my daughter and her boyfriend were not able to move freely. They weren't able to leave. They confiscated their cell phones, and they spent the entire day in my home manufacturing a crime where they set up a quote-unquote clandestine lab and accused my husband of manufacturing drugs. I'm a nutritional therapist and an RN. He's a doctor. I mean, we don't even allow high fructose corn syrup in our house. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard in your life. It's just the most, there's no GMO in this house. There's, we eat a traditional diet, and we're good people. I mean, people don't have to believe me from just listening, but I'm telling you, this is so off the hook. I can't even imagine still. Some days I wake up and I can't believe this is my life, and this is what we are going through to try to defend ourselves against these governmental thugs. It's just a gang of thugs.
But that's when you lost your fear? You saw that? It's just like the veil dropped?
Started to see it. We got practice. I mean, for 10 months we were going in and filing these documents that this man was helping us to write. And we were going into court. Well, once my husband's case came up, we did have an attorney for my son. We had hired her before the home invasion crime, and she even asked the judge to, on the record, ask us if we would fire her. And we refused to do it because we knew that because he was a minor, they weren't going to let us say a word. They wouldn't even hardly let us say a word having an attorney. They wouldn't let us sit with our son to comfort him, nothing. It's ridiculous. And she wouldn't do anything we asked her to do. But we knew that they would assign a public defender to him that would do no better. So we had paid her $3,500. We weren't letting her out of it. It was like, if we're going to get railroaded, at least we paid her. At least I've got her address and I can try to communicate with her. And so we just refused to do that. But once my husband was arrested and we were going into court, regarding him, after a few times, it was so incredibly stressful. We just said we can't do this anymore. We had done it for 10 months. None of the documents that we had filed ever got acknowledged. And we know that good is on our side, God is on our side, because things have just, timed themselves out. And this attorney that we do trust has shown up and is actually advocating for us. And if you're going to be conjured and represented in what I consider these courtrooms they're like little seance rooms, quite frankly, because if you're a dead corporate, quote-unquote, person, they're literally conjuring the dead. It's like probate court. It's the landlords fighting over your corporate body. And it's an ugly, ugly thing. But at least this woman is representing my husband in a way that he is requesting and asking her to do. That's why they call it summons. It's a summons. They're summonsing the dead, literally. It's so dark and diabolical that I can't even hardly wrap my mind around it, except I'm living it, and I am a spiritual person, and I can feel the dark and oppressive forces every time we're forced to go into that.
But if you're alive and it's all dead, then it does seem like what Joe was saying. You're a man or a woman. That's exactly. A lot of power.
Yeah. Never say you're a person. A person in legal terms is a corporation. They got so many definitions for person.
That they were able to take over certain, English words that are just part of our average American vernacular. Who are they that they get to take these word spells, so to speak, and own them and rule them and make them only theirs? We, as American humans, pieces of humus, walking around on this planet, we have to take this back. And that's what we're just trying to do now after doing this for 21 months. I'm not going to tell you I'm not afraid that they're going to try to make an example out of my family, because they don't want other Americans standing up to this. And the last statistic I saw, these SWAT full-on home invasions are happening about 100 times a day across this nation.
Well, consider also what you were doing. You're saying with the hemp oil, I've seen skin cancer drop off when you dab on the oil. So if your husband is hiring 12 people, you can imagine, some of these chemotherapy methods, which is, pumping rat poison through people.
Well, he wasn't hiring anyone to do anything.
No, I understand that, what I'm saying is your prominence in the community means that in a certain amount of time, the word starts to get out. Why be pumping rat poison through your veins when there's something that's it doesn't hurt as much and it's actually effective?
Well, and this is what it's
and there's many cures to cancer. I'm not just saying just that, but I'm just saying here you are. You're an RN. He's a doctor, and I can. Unfortunately, we're talking about an income stream, and people make projections on income streams, and they see that even if you're not making money at this, because you were talking about what the implications would be if your husband wasn't working, you couldn't support yourself or pay the rent just being a nutritional therapist. Mm-hmm. So it's not that you're making wads of money doing it. It's that when word gets out that a natural cure, that a plant that anybody could grow in their backyard is a far superior way of dealing with things, then you can see, all of these, methods, including the federal funding that's involved too, when they start padding and padding and padding until you have such expensive operations.
And I have to jump in again. We have to break just for station identification,
Okay.
and then we'll continue.
Thank you, Joe. You are listening to WIOFLP, Woodstock 104, the community station in Woodstock, New York. And it is a little bit after midnight, and Joe and Paula and Pot Talk continue.
Okay. Unfortunately, a lot of people listen to this. We want you people out there that are listening to this to really know this is not a one-of-a-time case. This is what's happening to these people is happening all over this country. And it's time for all you people out there to get involved. And once again, please give those addresses again. We beg you people out there in Woodstock and in the county of Ulster, write letters for these people. Tell the courts that what's going on is criminal. These people are being denied due process, equal protection. They've been violated. So it won't cost much it's a stamp and some paper and an envelope and a few minutes of your time. But those few minutes of your time could make a difference in someone's life. And go ahead, give them those addresses again, please.
Okay. Superior Court, Southwest Justice Center, 30755-D, Auld Road, AULD, Murrieta, MURRIETA, California, 92563. And address this to Judge John M. Davis and Judge Dennis A. McConaughey, MC, capital CONAGHY, and Deputy District Attorney Jade Holder.
And when are hearings coming up?
Our next hearing is like case management trial readiness hearing that is scheduled for December 23rd. We are, our attorney has been extremely busy today because we were just in court on Friday, so it's been the weekend and it just was Monday, trying to figure out her strategy, and we'll see how it all plays out. But there is a plan that I can't really discuss the details of yet, but we're working on some different issues. But I wanted to finish saying that this motion that she filed to disqualify the entire district attorney's office at this particular court, she laid out in that document all of the wrongdoing they have been doing. And we had a hearing, and Judge Davis, who was also the same judge the last time my husband represented himself pro per, he had tried to enter a demurrer to try to, establish the facts of this case, because this is all it's all made up. They've provided no proof of anything. He basically railroaded us and tricked us. He read the paperwork. He offered to make a ruling on it, and he basically said, denied. But he did, on the record, say that he read the entire thing, which had all kinds of attachments. It was probably a total of 30 to 40 pages long with all the attachments. So he knew our case really well. And we had been making such a stink in this county, I don't believe for one second he wasn't fully aware of who we were. But that was the first time we had been before Judge Davis. But he was the judge that they assigned for this disqualification hearing. And on the record, he said that he could be unbiased in this hearing because he didn't know any of the particulars of the Dortch case. So they just lie like dogs, they lie like rugs, and they get away with it. And they denied her motion completely, which we were not surprised. But
isn't it amazing, after all of that work and laying out the arguments and seeing, the Supreme Court rulings, and, a pro se's work should be liberally construed, and you hear of cases of people in prison who wrote it on toilet paper and prevailed, that after all of that they would do something like, oh, the legal name is copywritten and it's not yours? I mean,
yeah,
isn't that sort of...
It's mind-boggling. It truly is.
And yet we have to comprehend that boggle, because to get through these next steps, we have to live in this, on this high wire act.
And I'd like to jump in again to any of you people that want to write a letter. When you write a letter to this judge, remind this judge that he swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. And by denying due process and railroading these people, he's in violation of that oath, which is treason.
Yeah, good point.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm trying to think of what we need to finish up or go through next. And I'm not sure, because I wasn't able to listen to the portions of Red Ice interview that have already been heard by your...
We played the last hour and a half.
We played the last hour and a half.
Okay, so other than, the Mickey Mouse show that we saw on Friday, which was just, it was a nightmare. They just were really nasty to our attorney because she is not part of this old boys club. And my husband wouldn't waive his constitutional right to have the rest of these bogus charges that they've leveled on us, on his head. And we know a lot of it is just to try to scare us to death. But they have decided to add charges to my husband after all of this time. Now they're not only charging him with manufacturing, they're charging him with drug trafficking. I mean, it's just there's no drugs that were manufactured, so who in the world were we trafficking them to? But they have added this charge, and they've added a possession charge, and they have added back child endangerment. So, this didn't go over well with our son, who is still suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder from all that law enforcement has done to him in this county, throwing him in jail twice, arresting him 3 times now for the same crime, that he, was treated like an adult, and he admitted everything, not surprisingly, scared to death. And we do have recordings of those interrogations when he was questioned. So we know exactly what tactics they used and how they put words in his mouth. You were saying, how is it? I think it was Randy that was making the point that how can kids waive their Miranda rights? They, literally in the affidavit that this man that was helping us draw up all these documents and was helping us do things outside of, that was making our son's attorney furious, they literally told us, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Let me jump in again.
Miranda rights.
What? Oh, the Miranda thing. That my son, when he wrote the affidavit, he literally did misspell the word Miranda. And they were asking him, this police officer, Brandon Byler, he was asking him all kinds, he was feeding him information. You do know what a court is, don't you? Do you know what a lawyer is? They were just feeding him. Do you understand now? Do you understand what Miranda is now? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But we know there are Supreme Court cases here in California where parents have challenged this 6-hour suspension of your parental rights, and it's gone all the way to the Supreme Court, and they're supporting law enforcement to be able to do this. And it's just absolutely morally wrong.
Let me jump in again on something you said earlier. When they said they were charging your son, your husband with distribution, right? They're presuming, so you have to challenge that presumption. And if you don't challenge it, then they consider, in court, when someone makes a claim against you, if you don't challenge it, then it's presumed that you're agreeing to it. So always, when I've learned this, I'm not giving legal advice. I can't give legal advice.
She challenged everything.
I can tell you. Well,
they did, right? Kim?
Well, and our attorney will be filing motions to try to. This is just crazy because they talk about due process and what they're supposed to do. They didn't present anything at the preliminary hearing, which we have the transcript of now, finally. They refused to give it to our attorney in a timely manner with some lame excuse that they were only going to give it to her during the hearing so it would be, quote-unquote, official. Well, why can't you send the transcript and then provide a second copy officially? The whole thing was they didn't want her to be able to prepare any motions to file the day of the arraignment regarding the preliminary hearing. So it's just more fun and games over here in Riverside County. And they refused. Here this is, the DA's office that are leveling these further charges that they did not substantiate any grounds for at the preliminary hearing. They put on one main witness who was the most pathetic witness you've ever seen in your life. It was obvious that we shocked them because we refused to take any of these, little plea offers they were coming up with, and we said, nope, we'll just make you do the preliminary. We're done talking, basically put up or shut up. And I think that they literally called this investigator Medina 5 minutes before he was supposed to be in court because the man couldn't remember if he had been at our house all day during this raid. Then he later says, well, such and such an officer did call me to come to the house, so I guess that would mean he wasn't there all day. He couldn't remember whether there were children in the house. He couldn't remember if there were teenagers in the house. He couldn't remember if he was the one who found the lab or not. He admitted that some of the questions he asked my husband were not under Miranda. He couldn't remember which ones were and which ones weren't. And let me tell you, my husband was never Mirandized at all during anything that he said to these officers. So it just goes on and on. So they have...
Another question. Did your lawyer demand a jury trial?
Yes. Yes, she has.
Well, yeah. Let me tell you, from having gone through this many, many times, they try to scare the hell out of you, and they give you that first plea offer. And usually it's a garbage plea offer, and they figure most people are scared and they just take it. When you turn down the first one, then they'll bring you back a second time, and usually they'll lower it a little bit, thinking, well, all right, you'll take this one because, and they'll say, oh, well, it's going to go to court, and the judge is going to be hard on you. They try to intimidate you. Yep. But if you say, I demand a jury trial, what I've done it myself. I can't tell other people what to do, but I've done it. And you say if you take it right up to the line to a jury, the day of the court when they're supposed to pick a jury, the prosecutor will come out with the lowest little thing just to get you to plead guilty because they don't want it to go before a jury.
But again, that's what we're counting on. I can tell you that.
But again, Kim, we're not giving legal advice. Everyone has to find their own way because what Joe is describing happened a few years ago, and
happened in New Jersey.
Well, part of why it happened too is they, in the past were probably more alarmed about the level of corruption being known by the wider community. But as the wider community gets to accepting more and more and more of what's unacceptable, then it seems as though that's why the corruption should be stood up to. Otherwise, it gets worse.
And you always got to be really careful because they can really rig juries. The judge will turn around and say, you got to rule on the law the way I tell it to you. And don't
know about jury nullification anymore, which we need to teach people that are honest.
Right.
That are taken, being summoned to do jury duty. You have the right to, if these laws are insane and stupid, just nullify it. Just say, no, not going to do it. But I didn't know that until I got embroiled in all of this, that even existed. So I know most people don't. We're taught in school.
We've done shows on that, on jury nullification, on the right. You have a right to judge. This is for people that are out there that might be listening who might be on juries. You have a right as a jury, if you believe that the law itself is unjust, you can vote not guilty. You can say, I don't think that this law is just. And what a lot of people don't know, all it takes is one person to hang the jury, and once a jury says, and if a bunch of people say not guilty, no court can overturn a jury's decision. Unfortunately, if a jury finds you guilty, no higher court, even on a plea bargain, on an appeal, is going to overturn. Even if you're completely innocent and a jury finds you guilty and you can show that you're innocent, the higher court on appeal won't overturn it. So anybody out there that might be on a jury should really know the ins and outs of jury nullification. And only we the people, the courts are all criminal, so it's up to us the people to get on juries. Don't always try to get off juries. And when you know that the law is unjust, you hold your ground, and they'll try, even the judge will even try to intimidate you. They'll say, well, I don't like the verdict, go back and do this, redo this. And you say, no, I'm not going to vote guilty. They'll try to intimidate you, but they can't put a jury member in jail for taking a stand no matter what. So for people out there that are listening to this, it's time for the American people to get on juries, because the judges are corrupt, the prosecutors are corrupt, the lawyers make money, so they don't care. And it's we, the American people, that keep taking a beating in these courts. And it's time for we, the American people, to all stand up.
Absolutely.
You want to give those numbers and addresses once more before we sign off?
Sure. Superior Court,
Are you in a hurry?
Justice Center, 30755-D, Auld Road, AULD, Murrieta, MURRIETA, California, 92563. Judge John M. Davis, Judge Dennis A. McConaughey, McConaghy, and Deputy District Attorney Jade M. Holder. And Joe, what you were saying about the offers, that's exactly what we've seen. The first time we went for felony settlement conference, they offered for Dave to just go straight, don't pass go, go straight to jail and just sign yourself into booking for a 2-year sentence. Then we get the, little misdemeanor plea that no one will ever clarify verbally or any other way. And now they're leveling more charges on him, trying to scare the crap out of him when they don't have a case to begin with. And that's where we are now. And our attorney did not allow them to waive my husband's constitutional right and make all of this just never be on the record. And they refused to read their own charges that they're adding to him. So our attorney read them into the record. And the judge laughed, literally belly laughed the whole time she was reading them. Then called her and the deputy district attorney up to the bench/bank and chastised our attorney and told her that she had potentially caused my husband great harm by reading those charges in front of all those boys in orange over there in the little jailbird box, because not if, but when my husband is jailed, he's going to get beaten up because they heard that he has endangered a child.
Yeah.
These are just charges. Nothing's been proved. Apparently, Judge McConaughey has already plans for the rigged jury in the trial, because my husband's apparently, according to him, going to be guilty and going to go to jail and get beat up because he didn't waive his right to have these charges read on the record.
Isn't that enough to petition for a change in venue or to get another judge?
Yes,
because the judges
it
clearly
should be.
expressed bias.
But unfortunately, he didn't do it on the record. He did it on the sidebar where it's not on the record. There's sneaky little fuckers like that, But anyway, another thing, please give your email address to people so people could go to your email and check in with you, or if they, and you could put up your
anyone who wants to donate,
the court
obviously.
address. Yeah, and anybody out there that would like to help these people, we know, me and Paula and my son Jay, we've been fighting these courts. I've been fighting these courts since 1971, and it's been steady. It just has never stopped. And it can drain all your resources. And
it already has, and we do have a PayPal account where, I mean, $1. If enough people send $1, it would help. I mean, you just can't even imagine. To file an appeal, we were going to file an appeal on one decision that was made when we were still representing ourselves in our civil case, and it was going to cost $700 just to file the paperwork. Yep. We didn't have it. It was either pay the rent, pay for food, or you don't. And we have 2 kids, so it was like we were preempted. We literally could not do it. So
give you a PayPal account for people.
It's Dortch Legal Defense Fund, and it's linked to david.dortch@gmail.com. And I have started a blog.
DORTCH.
EORTCH.
Right.
And I have started a blog, Kim Dortch, at kimdortch.wordpress.com.
Okay.
And I'm putting updates there, and I'm trying to get a link to the donation site there as well. I know they put one at the end of the Red Ice show. I'm not the most computer-savvy person, so I'm working on some of that. And this thing takes up a tremendous amount of time.
Right.
And it just, you can't even understand if it hasn't come to your door, and praise God and be grateful every day that it hasn't. And have a heart for those of us who have been attacked by this crazy system that just systematically wants to ruin as many of us as they can, because we're just a cash cow. We're just farm animals on the farm, and they just need to harvest us, a group at a time, an individual at a time, a family at a time. And it's got to stop. We just all have to stand up and say, we outnumber you so many. We're not tolerating it anymore.
And so writing those letters is an expression that you don't accept that complacency to be referred to as an animal.
Action piece people can do. A lot of people just give lip service to things, but we have to act. We have to act upon our moral thoughts and our moral desires for a cooperative, harmonious planet where we can live together in something that resembles cooperation and something in tune with the natural environment.
So kimdortch.wordpress.com, and then they can go to that and they'll see the same addresses that you just gave us, in case people didn't write it down. Kim.
Yeah. We got about 6 minutes. Is there anything more that you'd like to add?
Well, my husband's sitting here too. I'll see if he has anything.
Yeah, David, Dr. David.
He can just say some words to the public out there that's listening, and I know he's very appreciative as well.
I would like to just say a kind thanks for listeners, and just for you guys giving us this opportunity to get this story out there. But as you said, Joe, you've had your own scenario. You've been right in the middle of it for years, and we know many people. And in fact, I will say that I've had countless numbers of patients come forward that have seen some of the bad press, and fortunately, my character does precede me, and people that have known me for years, they don't like what they see, but most of them have the balls enough to either come in and say something or call. And I've really appreciated that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Other ones, maybe not so, because there's always a percentage of people that listen to what they hear. They believe what they see on the news and what they hear. But generally speaking, I've been very, very happy with the level of encouragement and support that my patients have given me. I do have quite a few patients that are in the realm of public service, firefighters and police officers, sheriff and whatnot, probation officers. I've never had any issues, any beef with these people, but I do have a beef with people who are on a job and they see something that's being morally done against somebody, either in their job or
immoral,
that's being, perpetrated against, and them not standing up against it. That's a problem. So, I encourage anybody in law enforcement to really reevaluate their morality as it relates to them on a conscious level, not as it relates to their job security. Because if you want to keep a job and you want to follow rules and you want to leave your conscience by the curb, police force is a good way to do it.
David, what do you think about if I sent you some DVDs and you went to those families with the fences and you just, just tried to get a little connection going? I think that might be very powerful. Like, if you have some of those patients that have the courage to come up even to broach the subject,
yes,
that's really wonderful. I remember a week ago somebody said they would not come to the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, that's a public access studio, mix and match, because they were afraid of being banned, and they knew they couldn't sit by and have us be maligned when they knew that we were right. You see what I'm saying? Just to hear that made me feel so good that somebody, they didn't come, that's true. They didn't put it on the record that they were supporting us, but at least they said that's why they didn't come. And so then I said, people aren't coming because of this. And then I threw it in their face to say we're being discriminated against, we're being cast in a false light. And then they back off,
Paul is talking about, we do shows down in New York City. It's at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And they've been trying to shut us down and stifle free speech. And we've organized with other producers down there. And we're taking on big Time Warner Cable and Comcast. And we're in a big battle of fighting for free speech. And so we've been under attack down there also. And that's what Paul is talking about, though. Quite a few. It's wonderful when some people actually take a stand, but unfortunately, 90% of the people in America are sheep, and it's time for these sheep to start waking up and realize that they're lions if they stand up, and that's what we encourage everybody to do. Throw off that sheepskin, become a lion, and get involved.
Yeah, or just a man or a woman compared to a dead corporate entity. And people who are employees, you can wake up employees to say, you're a man and a woman too. You don't have to make this morally wrong decision to violate my rights.
Well, we have had the opportunity to educate people as much as we can with the knowledge we have thus far, and it's gaining by the day.
Right.
And it's also been amazing how many people have come to see my husband and are in that chair in there, and they start telling him now the horrible things that have happened to them at the hands of law enforcement in this county. And we realize we are not alone, and that's what is the scariest part of this, is that we have to all unite and stand up to make it stop.
Right.
One thing I've noticed is that it seems that people are in a way kind of shameful of any type of confrontation with the law, and it seems like it takes something to drag it out of them or to allow them to feel safe in discussing something that they may have kind of stuffed, into a...
Shameful or fearful?
People don't want other people to know.
They're ashamed, and I think they're fearful that, it's like